Hey class, this is Mrs. Williams. I'm here to talk about chapter 10, but before we do, hope the chapter 9 test wasn't too difficult for you guys. Some of you guys have been asking about using coupons or adding points. I'm not going to take them at this time. It's just going to be too difficult to keep up with all the points and that sort of thing. So what we will do is when we get back, we'll kind of revisit this issue. I may go back and add some coupons and allow you guys to add some coupons to different things, but I won't go further back than the time that we've been at, okay? All right, so let's talk about gas laws and gases. This is chapter 10, so you should start a new section in your notebook. Don't forget to date and number those pages too. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about gases. And by the way, this is one of my favorite chapters in the book, so yay for that. We'll start with the kinetic molecular theory. We talked about this way back in chapter 3, I believe, and we're just kind of touching on it again. We're not going to go into too much depth. With the kinetic molecular theory, it's a way to explain the way that gases behave. Kind of explains that. And there are 5 things that we have to assume to be true for the kinetic molecular theory to be true or to be valid. The first thing is that gas particles are small in comparison to the distance that they are from one another. And I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. We know that the gas particles are tiny, but we also know that the particles in a gas are very spread out. And so that kind of makes sense to that end. The second thing is that particles are moving at random and they're moving very fast. And I've coined the term that gases are like the free spirits of the states of matter. And this kind of goes with that. They're free spirit. They're moving constantly. They're moving at random with no real direction. And that kind of just makes sense there. Number 3, those particles don't like to interact with one another unless they have to because they bumped into one another. When they do so, it's for a brief moment. They bump and then they move off into a different direction. And again, in that very high velocity. Number 4, that when they do bump into one another, that the collisions are considered to be elastic. And when we say something is elastic, it's conserving its energy. It hasn't transferred its energy to the other particle. It's the same. It's maintained the same. And then the last one is the average kinetic energy is directly proportional to the temperature of the gas. And of course, this chapter we're going to talk about temperature, but everything must be in Kelvin. All right, so make sure that you keep everything in Kelvin. But we'll talk about that a little later on. Now, let's think about this just for a quick moment. If you think about it from a standpoint of water, if we were trying to heat or boil water or freeze water, this concept makes sense. So let's start with freezing the water. If I lower the temperature, the kinetic energy is going to be slower. It's going to slow down those particles. It's so much so that they get close enough to one another and eventually form a solid. Now, if I wanted to boil water, I have to turn up or increase the temperature. Because I'm increasing the temperature, the kinetic energy of those particles in the gas will be moving at a higher rate. And it's increasing and increasing to the point that the liquid eventually becomes a gas. So if you think about it from that standpoint, this statement kind of makes sense. Two physical properties that I'd like to talk about as it relates to gases would be diffusion and effusion. You're probably familiar with diffusion, where it's saying that a gas spreads out over time to fill an area. So it goes from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. The best way that I can explain that is if I'm in the room and I wanted to spray some air freshener from one side of the room, eventually that fragrance will fill the entire room, or at least get to enough of the students or whoever's in the room to the other side, and they'll eventually smell it because of diffusion. The second one is effusion. That's probably a newer term to you all. And what that says is that the gas particles are passing through a tiny opening in some container. The way that I like to think about that is, let's say you have a balloon and you had a small hole in the balloon at the beginning. You taped it up, you blew up the balloon and then removed the tape that was blocking the tiny little hole. eventually the air is going to escape through that tiny hole, and eventually the balloon will deflate. So if you think about it from that standpoint, hopefully effusion and diffusion makes sense. Don't confuse the two. They are not the same. They sound very similar, but they're definitely two different terms. I'm going to play this video, just a few seconds of it, and hopefully that'll help you understand a little bit better as well.
In this lesson, we will discuss the effusion and diffusion of gases. Let's begin by determining the difference between effusion and diffusion. Effusion is when molecules escape a container through an opening. An example of this would be air leaking from a hole in a tire. Diffusion, on the other hand, is when molecules of one gas mix with molecules of another gas. An example of this would be molecules of a scented perfume diffusing into the molecules of air.
The rest of that video actually goes into Graham's law of effusion, so I'll just pick up from there. So Graham's law of effusion says that the rate of effusion for a gas, which is what we just talked about, the ease to escape a small opening, is inversely proportional to the square root of the molar mass. Now when you see that or when you hear that, it may sound a little bit confusing, but this is actually the first calculation that you have to do in this chapter. So when we look at it, it's not as bad as it seems. So we have the inverse proportional. This is what that means, inversely proportional. That's the little fish looking thing, to the square root of the molar mass of that particular gas. Now there are going to be times when I'll ask you for the rate of effusion for a specific gas. Most times, however, I want to compare two different gases. All right. So if I have an example where I need to, or a problem where I'm trying to compare the rate of effusion between two gases or the ratio between those two gases, you approach it very similarly. But you get the inverse of each gas's molar mass, and then you proceed. All right. So let's say gas 1 has a molar mass of X, and gas 2 has a molar mass of Y. Those are replacements. All right. If we were using the idea of the inverse of those, I have to flip them, right? So the first one that's listed is always the one that you're comparing to the second one. And so in this case, because it's the inverse, the first gas, we're doing the molar mass, the square root of the molar mass on the bottom. And the second gas, the square root on the top, all right? And so when we just put in our numbers, we plug in chug, and we get an answer. And that's just saying when we're comparing gas 1 to gas 2, this is what the rate of effusion would be. Okay? So let's try to look at an example problem. This problem is in your book, 253. So if you kind of saw it already, this is what we're talking about. But we'll go through to answer it right now. So calculate the rate of effusion rates between nitrogen and argon. So because nitrogen and argon are the ones that we're talking about, nitrogen's listed first, I know that I need to figure out what the molar mass is for that. It is a diatomic molecule or element, so I know 14.01 must be multiplied by the 2 here, all right? So that's where I get my 28.02 grams per mole. Argon, on the other hand, is not a diatomic molecule, but I just need to look at the periodic table to figure out what that is, and that's 39.95 grams per mole. I used the equation that I just showed you because nitrogen is listed first. That's technically my X, and argon is listed second. That's my Y. So the equation would look something like this. The square root of the molar mass of argon divided by the square root of the molar mass of nitrogen. All right? And then I plug in my numbers, and the answer here is saying the rate comparing nitrogen to argon for effusion is about 1.1. Notice there are no units. They would cancel out, so you don't have to worry about units in this particular problem. All right, you should have tried this one, or if you haven't, you can go ahead and try to do that now. So we have to calculate the rate of effusion between carbon dioxide and nitrogen. And notice this is going on the left side, so make certain that's where you put that in your notebook, okay? I already know the molar mass for nitrogen is 28.02, and carbon dioxide I've already calculated, that's 44.01. So the square root of the second one over the square root of the first gas, and you plug it in, and it's 0.7979. So we're looking at about a 0.8 rate of effusion for carbon dioxide as it relates to nitrogen. Okay? All right, a few definitions that you probably need to be familiar with. The first one being permeability. Permeability is just the ability of a gas to mix with or pass through another substance. Okay? Fluidity. Fluidity is a term that we often only assign to liquids, but gases are also fluid. The meaning of fluidity is just that it has the ability to glide past one another or slide past one another. And so, yes, gases are considered fluids as well because they have that ability. The next one is compressibility. We've talked about that before as well. That just means that it can change its volume in order to fit into a container. Remember, those particles are very far apart. If we're trying to squeeze them closer together or compress them closer together, that kind of makes sense that I would be able to fit more of that particular gas into a container because I'm not bringing those particles that were once far away closer together. The next one is expansibility. That's the opposite of compressibility. It's where the gas is quickly expanding, all right? Now, typically you're talking about having a low pressure situation, but that's basically what it is. One is bringing it closer together. The other one is allowing that gas to release and fill up that area. And it fills quickly. So this is a lot different than diffusion, which is happening over time. Expansibility is almost instant. All right, so make sure that you know the difference between those two. All right, the next thing that we're going to talk about is pressure. This is our second equation for the chapter. And pressure is the average force exerted per unit of area. We will do some pressure problems, but not a whole lot of calculate the pressure here. More conversions, and I'll talk about that on the next section. All right. So to put it simply, pressure is equal to the force divided by the area. Now, the normal atmospheric pressure at sea level can have different values. These are some that we are very familiar with. 14.7 psi is the first one. Yours may have a 9. There was no reason for it. I'm not really sure what that was about, so I'm sorry. I didn't notice it until I was recording earlier. 760 millimeters of mercury, 760 torr, or 1 atmosphere. There are a couple of others that we use a little bit more frequently, or these are the ones that we use more frequently, but there is a kilopascal as well. Now, the SI unit for pressure is actually the pascal. Most of the questions that I will ask will probably be in ATM, and I like ATM because it's easy to remember, or PSI, but the SI unit is the pascal. Now down here is just showing you the relationship of those different pressures, okay? So what this is saying is that for 1 atmosphere, that is equal to 101.3 kilopascal. That's one that's not listed up here, but of course you could put that there, which is also equal to 760 millimeters of mercury and 14.7 psi and 760 torr. Now, knowing this is only helpful in the cases where you have to convert from one type of pressure to another type of pressure. We are going to, again, talk about that in the next lesson. So don't be alarmed if you don't understand what to do here, okay? All right, so before I get off, I just wanted to remind you or reiterate the fact that you guys have homework. It's not due until Monday, though, so don't stress about it. Chapter 10A, the questions 1 through 10 on page 256, write and complete sentences, show your work if necessary, and upload through LMS as a PDF. And it should be online. You can work on it at any time. You can type it up or write it in notebook paper. That is entirely up to you. All right, tomorrow we'll continue the lesson. All right, have a good night.